Terribly important, terribly misunderstood, crime of the century.
Carnivore diet.
Very extreme.
Yeah. And extreme diets very rarely work out well in the end for people practicing them.
In his analogy, the American health system is the Titanic and it's sinking, and politicians are like, hey, go rearrange those chairs.
Testosterone for men.
Highly abused, unfortunately, and highly scamified. Women respond very well to physiologic doses of testosterone.
Fasting.
You just have to be careful that you're not underdoing your protein.
Your deodorant.
Hoax.
Hoax is probably not the right word. Hey everyone, Happy New Year. We are pleased to announce that the Optispan podcast has been renewed for a third season due to audience demand. So thank you for that. We're going to try some new stuff this year, some guest hosts, some events. We'll give you more information on that, but be ready for some March Madness, I will say. All right. First of all, did you have a good holiday? Did you do anything exciting?
I did. No, it was family. I got 2 young kids, so Christmas is a lot of fun at this age. So
yeah.
A lot of catching up on sleep, workouts, family time.
Yeah.
But what about you?
Yeah, I mean, we had both kids home for the holidays, which was great. And now they're both back to their respective lives, which is also great. Tammy and I are enjoying being empty nesters. We had a great Christmas, little, family gathering at home. And then we went to New York for the ball drop, which was super cool. So did the whole Times Square craziness thing. Had been a bucket list item for a while. So that was a ton of fun.
Yeah. And related to today, you went with Anderson Cooper, right? Or you got tickets from Anderson Cooper?
Yes, we did. So, right. So I was very fortunate. This was back earlier this summer to be able to participate in an interview for 60 Minutes for the Dog Aging Project that Anderson Cooper was hosting. So I went down to Arizona to film that. Just kind of hit it off with Anderson. I mean, he's a super great guy. Like yeah. I'm just blown away that somebody with that level of celebrity is so down to earth, so genuine. Anyways, we're just sort of chatting, and I told him how, for years we have watched the CNN show on New Year's Eve and how we enjoyed it a ton. And it's sort of been a bucket list item for us to go to Times Square one year just to experience it. And, he just out of nowhere says, "Oh, you should, and I'll get you passes." And I was like, "Wait a minute, man, come on.
Yeah.
You're shitting me, right? You're not really going to do that." But he did. So yeah, so it was really neat. We got passes that kind of allowed us to go anywhere in Times Square that we wanted to. We didn't have to, stand in line, wear the diapers, do all that stuff. So it was amazing. And I'm just so grateful to him for that opportunity. Got to see the ball drop, the countdown, the fireworks. We couldn't get up on the main stage where Ryan Seacrest was doing his show, but we could get close, saw Diana Ross perform, which was super cool. And a bunch of other, young performers who I don't know who they are because I'm old. But yeah, once in a lifetime experience. Again, just so much gratitude that we got to do that. And the weather was perfect. It was cold, not snowing, not raining. So couldn't ask for a better experience.
That's cool. We'll show a photo right now on screen. But yeah, but way different for me. I was asleep by 9 p.m. So
yeah, that's my normal. Although that's midnight in the East Coast. So,
true. Yeah. So the reason I mentioned 60 Minutes is because Peter Attia was recently on interviewed by Nora O'Donnell.
Right.
And so that was great. I think we separately, not on the show, but we watched the full.
I haven't watched it yet. So I haven't seen the 60 Minutes episode with Peter, but I definitely have heard about it. And I mean, knowing Peter, I'm sure you did a great job.
It was good. Yeah. But we had a question about his opinion on rapamycin. That wasn't in the full length episode, but it was in this one, which is a about 2.5 minute sort of rapid fire. So she asked probably over a dozen different sort of questions, and then he gives a quick 5-word response to it. So I thought we'd watch it together and kind of pause it and get your opinion on the rapid fire.
Sounds good.
Great.
A regular multivitamin.
Pass.
What's your opinion?
I generally agree. I mean, I think the question, it depends on what the question is. Is the question, should everyone take a regular multivitamin because there are tons of benefits associated with a multivitamin? I don't think we know that, right? On the other hand, I can see a rationale for taking a multivitamin as an insurance policy if you have any deficiencies, right? So not regularly. I have one in there, and I'll take it once in a while, but I don't take a multivitamin regularly. But I don't see a ton of downside to it, I guess is the way I would say it.
So I do one regularly for an insurance policy, especially when I'm cutting, just to make sure I'm getting enough nutrients.
Yeah, and if you're in caloric deficiency and you don't have a diverse diet, like I said, not a lot of downside.
You just described me right now, so that's why I take one.
Next one.
Metformin.
Definitely pass.
So again, hard to do in this format. And I agree with him for longevity purposes. People who don't have diabetes or metabolic dysfunction, I don't think metformin makes sense. It's a good diabetes drug. So you just want to say that if you're taking metformin for diabetes or pre-diabetes, that's fine. I just don't see any rationale for people who don't have metabolic dysfunction. Take metformin, and I would say I would personally gravitate more towards an SGLT2 inhibitor if you have pre-diabetes or maybe even diabetes over metformin if you're hoping to also get add-on benefits.
Okay. Yeah, obviously they prepped him for this rapid fire. I'm kind of wanting to know what the context was. I have a feeling the way he said for the general population on the last question that she prepped him. I'll name things for the general population.
Right.
You give your opinion.
Right. Or things that are super popular in the wellness space right now or stuff like that. Yeah.
That's why I think it was a hard pass, because he's thinking of 20-year-olds and he's thinking of everyone. But
right.
Seed oils.
At modest quantities, probably not harmful.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that as well. I think there are several things that are overemphasized in what people should be concerned about, and then people don't pay attention to the things that are really important. Seed oils probably fall in that category.
Like, I know you check label for sugar. Do you check label for seed oils?
Not really.
Yeah, so if a little bit ends up there, not a huge deal breaker.
Mouth tape.
If you are a mouth breather and you're trying to learn to nasal breathe, I think it's a good technique.
Sure. I don't have a strong opinion. I tried it. Not for me, whatever.
Yeah. I did it for probably about 6 months, and I think it gave me gave me the habit of breathing through my nose.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the way Peter answered it is pretty good. Like, for some people, sure, if it can be helpful.
Bluetooth versus wired headphones.
No evidence whatsoever that Bluetooth headphones are causing any health damage.
I think that's pretty reasonable. Again, you always have to be careful to say no evidence whatsoever. I agree with him. I don't think it's something we need to be super worried about, other than I think it is worth saying, right, that EMF does affect biological systems, can affect biological systems. And so I don't want to completely dismiss the possibility that EMF, other types of electromagnetic radiation that we're exposed to, and we're being exposed to more and more and more, have nothing that we should be concerned about. So I would only add to that, we should continue to pay attention and do research on the impact of these levels of exposure to biological systems.
Yeah. When both our kids were newborns, my wife was very adamant on no EMS near them. And now that they're older, she's calmed down quite a bit.
And it's almost impossible, right? This is the kind of thing where you don't want to spend all your time agonizing over all the environmental exposures, right? Humans are always going to be exposed to things in the environment that are, neutral or detrimental and positive, right? So you don't want to spend a ton of time agonizing over it. We are becoming more and more exposed to different radio frequencies, EMF frequencies, and total load, right? And so just continuing to be aware and do research to understand, is there anything to be concerned about? Because what we don't want to do is find out 30 years from now that there's all these negative consequences. We'd rather find out sooner. But I don't think there's anything to be worried about.
Even if I knew that, it'd be tough for me to give up my AirPods.
Weighted vests.
Probably not as good as a rucksack.
Peter loves rucksacks. Yeah. I mean, again, maybe. Peter likes to talk about majoring in the minor, right? This feels like, okay, but, really? Do you care if it's a weighted vest or a rucksack? I don't.
Yeah, same here.
And again, it's going to be individual. Like, I think his rationale is rucksacks are more, going to stabilize the spine, maybe be slightly better for force to improve bone density, things like that. Exercise. And if you want to use a weighted vest or a rucksack, great.
Yeah, I use a 20-pound weighted vest to make cardio a bit harder. But do you have one?
I do. I have a vest. I used it for a while when we would do the stairs regularly. I've sort of backed away from it, and I just want to get a true. I mean, so for me, wearing the weighted vest emphasizes the muscle part more than the respiratory part when I do the stairs. And right now, I just want to get my respiratory fitness up as best I can.
Carnivore diet.
Very extreme.
Yeah. And extreme diets very rarely work out well in the end for people practicing them.
Heavy metal detox.
No evidence that it does anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm not maybe as up to speed as I could be on what is popular when it comes to heavy metal detox. Now, if we're talking about, supplements that are supposed to help clear out mercury,
Sauna.
cadmium. Yeah, again, that's what I mean. I'm not quite sure what we're talking about here. I guess what I would say is there are a few heavy metals that we measure regularly in our clients at Optispan that we want to be aware of, right? Lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, things like that. Most people, it's not an issue, but I would say, we see pretty significant fraction of people with detectable mercury levels that are above where we would want it to be. And some people where it's really concerning. So you want to know if you have metal exposure. I would say in most cases, the first step is to identify where is the exposure coming from and try to reduce that. Right. But there are some therapeutic ways to reduce metals, whether it's chelation therapy or therapeutic plasma exchange that can potentially have value. So I wouldn't completely dismiss the idea that we should measure metals and take steps to reduce them. I'm not saying that's what Peter's doing. I just think there's some context here, but there's probably this whole category of sort of, snake oil, heavy metal detox that he's thinking of. Yeah, I just don't know a lot about that. I'm not paying any attention to that.
I bet when he hears detox, he's thinking of cleanses or saunas. He's not thinking
if people are trying to sell supplements to do that stuff, it's like the supplements that boost testosterone but don't, right? I mean, there's a bunch of scam stuff out there, and that's probably what he's talking about.
Food dyes.
Majoring in the minor, minoring in the major.
What's that mean?
Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Good political answer.
So first of all, it's interesting she said political answer. I didn't actually think that was a very political answer, but it is funny he said majoring in the minor, minoring in the major. I agree with that. I'm not sure it's going to be clear to everybody exactly what he means. I think maybe the way I would frame it is, I think we don't need the food dyes in our food. There's no good reason to have them there. And they can have negative health consequences in a tiny, tiny fraction of people. So I think the concern around food dyes is much greater than it probably should be based on the science. And I think what he's saying, and what I agree with completely, is relative to the big problems like added sugars, it's like a non-issue, right? So if we think about it, I think with food dyes, there's also some misunderstandings about what the data actually show. I think it's my understanding that for food dyes, the cancer risk has essentially not been supported in the literature and epidemiological studies. So maybe there's a tiny, tiny risk, but it's pretty small. And the neurocognitive effects are also have been greatly overestimated. And when you look at the actual data, it probably is the case that high exposures to food dyes, can contribute to ADHD and behavioral issues in children. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of the total cases, right? And if you compare that to added sugars, where we know that drives, 50% of the obesity epidemic, maybe more. And you just look at the number of cases and the years of quality life lost. I'm making this up, but it's probably pretty close in terms of like relative effects. It's maybe a few thousand cases of cancer, ADHD worldwide a year for food dyes versus millions, tens of millions of cases of diabetes and obesity. So we're talking 3-4 orders of magnitude difference. It is a bit of a distraction to focus on the food dyes when we should be focusing on the real problems in our food supply. That's, I think, the way I would frame it. And politically, politicians can, take credit and distract people by saying, oh, look over here at this bad stuff we're fixing. And they don't do anything about the real problems, right? That would be, I think, maybe that's what she's talking about, a political answer. I don't know. But I do think it's good to get them out. We don't need them. And we're not paying attention to the real problems. If people really wanted to address the negative consequences of our food supply on health, they would focus on added sugars. They would focus on industrial farming, things like that.
I will add, on the 60 Minutes Instagram post, all the top comments were kind of upset at him for his political answer. They're like, why is he speaking in riddles about food dyes? Like, they didn't, it wasn't received well. But
again, probably what I just said is going to piss some people off, because a lot of people really want to believe that food dyes are, Satan's handiwork to and again, I'm saying, yeah, we should get rid of them, but that's not the real problem. So it's a distraction. You are being distracted from what is the real problem, which is not uncommon in our society.
In his analogy, the American health system is the Titanic, and it's sinking, and politicians are like, hey, go rearrange those chairs. That's what he's trying to get at.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
great.
Microplastics.
There's definitely a signal there, and there are 5 or 6 changes a person can make in their life to reduce probably 80% of their exposure, and they're worth doing.
Again, I agree with him. I'm not blasting Peter because it's hard to do in this format. It's a little bit unfortunate that he didn't say what the steps are, right? So microplastics are things, again, that we are exposed to. I would say the likelihood that microplastics cause negative health consequences is greater than Bluetooth, for sure. We don't know how bad they are. Should we take steps to reduce our exposure? Sure. I think the way he said it, it makes it unclear what those steps are. What should we really be worried about? I think there's a lot of concern about orally ingested microplastics, drinking water from plastic water bottles, things like that. 99+% of orally ingested microplastics aren't going to get taken up by your body. So we really don't know. Doesn't mean they couldn't have consequences on your microbiome or whatever, but measuring microplastics in your poop isn't really telling you much about how much is getting into your body, right? Yeah. So what are the key exposures? Where do they come from? I'm not sure that we actually have really good data on that. There's a lot of sort of, common sense speculation around where it's coming from. I'm not sure we really know. So what can people do? I mean, obviously, sure. Don't drink out of plastic water bottles, right? Don't microwave your food in plastic containers. Should you get an air purifier for your house? Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea, both for air pollution and microplastics, if you can afford it. If not, maybe have your windows open. I think the evidence suggests that indoor exposure is probably more of a problem than outdoor exposure, but it depends on where you live. If you're in a place where there's lots of car traffic, you're going to get microplastics from the tires, and there's going to be air pollution from the cars. So It's hard to know. So anyways, I mean, I think those are the kinds of places I would think about. I'm not sure we really know exactly the 5 or 6 areas where most people are getting the most exposure from. But yeah, take pragmatic steps to reduce your exposure. Don't freak out about it. It's probably not anywhere near as large a concern to most people's health as it's been portrayed by people who want to scare you and make money off of you.
Yeah. You mentioned most of my big thing is anything heat and plastic. So I do glass Tupperware and stuff like that, or coffee I would do in a actual ceramic mug. One thing you do that I don't is the K-cups, the Keurig.
Oh, yeah.
To me, that seems like a lot of heat going through a period of plastic, but
yeah. And I mean, again, you're right. I mean, that probably makes sense to avoid that.
It's so convenient.
Yeah, it is. And again, this is why I say pragmatic, what works for you. I also happen to know, because I measured my microplastics, that I have almost no microplastic exposure, at least in my urine, right? So my levels are low, so I'm not maybe as motivated to take every possible step that I could to reduce them further, right? I don't really know why my levels are low, because I've stopped drinking out of plastic water bottles most of the time, right? But and again, I'm not saying everybody should measure their microplastics. The only reason I did it was because I was doing therapeutic plasma exchange and I wanted to have a before and after. But I found out that before my level was 0 or 1 or something like that. It was tiny. Yeah.
So it was the same before and after?
It was actually a tiny bit higher.
Oh,
it was still, essentially 0, but it was like from 1 to 4 particles. And the scale is like from 0 to tens of thousands.
I saw someone make a good YouTube comment that was like, the albumin during therapeutic plasma exchange is in a plastic bag.
That's right.
And so like, would that increase your level?
Yeah, or the tubing itself.
The tubing, yeah,
right?
all the tubing. So
yeah, I think that's what we're learning, is that therapeutic plasma exchange will put a tiny amount of microplastic particles into circulation. But if you have a high burden, your net is going to be lower, a lot lower.
It's a good way to think about it. Next one, hormone replacement
therapy.
Terribly important, terribly misunderstood, crime of the century.
So and here we're talking about women, I assume.
I assume so, because the next one's testosterone for men.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, crime of the century, pretty bold words. I do think that it's extremely unfortunate the way the Women's Health Initiative was interpreted and the impact that it had on, a whole generation of doctors and medical care and women who didn't get access to hormone therapy. So I agree, which is, I think, what he's getting at when he says crime of the century. The only thing I would add is I would say, this is my personal opinion, but I think we should think about shifting the narrative in healthcare away from, for a woman who's perimenopausal or menopausal, away from, is hormone therapy right for this woman, to, is there some reason why it's not right for this woman? So in other words, my personal view is the default should be hormone therapy for women. And of course, it's going to be an individual thing to determine, is there some reason for this particular woman not to do hormone therapy? And I would say because of the Women's Health Initiative and because we lost a whole generation of researchers and doctors and opportunities to really understand the biology of menopause in women and hormone therapy, it's still pretty early days. I know it's a huge source of frustration for many of the women who I know, important women in my life who are going through this menopausal transition, that there's so much guesswork that goes on, even among the doctors who have a lot of experience. So care will get better. And it's just really unfortunate that we don't know more than we do.
Yeah. Now I want to see Peter talk to Brad Stanfield about the Women's Health Initiative, because you and Brad kind of disagreed on it, which people can see on our podcast episode. Yeah. And Peter seems even more extreme about it than you in terms of it being the crime of the century. So
yeah, I don't know that Brad and I disagree on so much where we're at now. I think where we disagreed was, I think Brad was less likely to cast blame on the researchers who interpreted the data, the medical committees who then put forth the guidelines based on it. Hindsight is 2020. And again, that's why I sort of personally feel like even myself, I should stop talking so much about the blame part. It doesn't matter. We're here. We're where we're at. I think most people will agree it was a mistake. Mm-hmm. The intentions were good. It was a mistake. We need to move on to where we're at now. So I think I will say though, where Brad and I still disagree, I think, is Brad is much more likely to have faith in the academics who are putting out guidelines than I am. And I'll just say I've had a lot more experience in academia than Brad has. So I've got my eyes wide open when it comes to academics.
All right.
Testosterone for men.
Less misunderstood than hormone replacement therapy for women. Generally a net positive. Highly abused, unfortunately, and highly scamified.
Yeah, I guess maybe the only things I would add, obviously I've had my own personal experience. It was great for me personally, right? Big impact. He's right that it is highly abused in the sense that it's pretty easy to get access. And a lot of the clinics that are out there operating the online companies are just prescribing testosterone to anyone who wants it without any real medical rationale for it. That's potentially going to be problematic for people down the road. I think we don't know how bad that's going to be, but certainly some people are going to be harmed. And then scamified, I'm guessing he's talking about what we touched on earlier, these supplements that people are selling that supposedly boost testosterone. That's just garbage. It's all like, if you feel like you're getting benefit from the supplements, great. I don't think there's any evidence that they actually work for most people.
And also, when I think of scamify, I think of if I wanted to get testosterone right now, even though I've got great, LH and FSH and testosterone, whatever, they would give it to me.
Yeah, that's not really a scam. That's unethical practice of medicine.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Fair enough.
At least in my view, a scam is when somebody tells you something that's not true or sells you something that doesn't work, right? And they know it doesn't work. But yes.
Testosterone for menopausal women.
Oops, there.
Emerging area of research and interest. I think the evidence are quite positive, and empirically, women respond very well to physiologic doses of testosterone.
Yeah, and this goes back to what we were talking about before, which is because of the 20 or so years where we didn't get a lot of data and experience in hormone therapy for women, we just don't know enough right now to that's why I think he was sort of couching, his answer a little bit. The early data looks really, really good. And I'll just say from my own experience, I talked to a fair number of doctors who do hormone therapy for women and a fair number of women in my life who are experiencing hormone therapy. And I have yet to hear anyone be negative about testosterone as part of hormone therapy protocol for perimenopausal and menopausal women. It's, again, very individual. Not saying every woman should get testosterone, but again, everybody I've talked to has been positive. I've yet to hear anyone say, no, that's a bad idea. And so I think the other thing I would say, I was actually having lunch with a good friend of mine about a week ago who is menopausal on hormone therapy. And we were talking about, what she's taking for her hormone therapy. And she's not taking testosterone. Her doctor has never once talked to her about testosterone as part of her hormone therapy. Again, my non-medical opinion, she has symptoms that suggest that she might benefit from testosterone. She's also an extremely, extremely low dose of progesterone. And she said her doctor is a progesterone minimalist, whatever that means. So my response to her was, look, your doc hasn't talked to you about testosterone. You've got sleep disturbances. You're on a lower than at least the doses that I'm seeing as standard dose of progesterone. You need to find a new doc, and I'll help you find a new doc. Right. So that would be my advice. If you're a woman and your doctor's not talking to you about hormone replacement therapy and you're perimenopausal or menopausal, and especially if you have symptoms, or if you are talking to your doctor about hormone therapy and you're not talking about testosterone and or progesterone, find a new doctor.
Sleep tracking.
Okay, as long as it doesn't produce anxiety.
Wearable.
I'm guessing the answer is going to be the same for wearables.
Wearables too.
Same answer.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair, right? Again, these are great tools. They can be super useful. Sleep tracking can teach people both about their quality of sleep and things that may or may not be impacting their quality of sleep. If these things are creating anxiety for you, then that's counterproductive and you shouldn't use them.
Yeah. Kids woke me up multiple times last night. I have not checked my Oura ring. I won't even open the app.
You got to know what's going on. Yeah.
I'll check it like 3 days from now. I'm like, okay. But
yeah, and we've probably talked about this before, but I wore an Oura ring for about 6 months. I felt like I learned what I needed to learn. I haven't worn one since. I don't use any sleep tracker.
I swear my kids know if I have like an important interview, if we're filming, because those are the nights they wake me up.
I understand.
I'm in your deodorant.
Hoax.
Yeah, that was interesting. Of all of these, this is the one that was most interesting to me.
Well, again, I think it's hard in the context of these rapid fire. Hoax is probably not the right word. So first of all, my understanding is, this is maybe a little bit semantic, but it's not deodorant. It's antiperspirant that has aluminum in it. So not everybody needs an antiperspirant, number one. If you just use a deodorant, or if you don't need an antiperspirant and you want to avoid aluminum, just use a deodorant. Number two, I would say, and this is probably what Peter's getting at, there was a lot of concern about aluminum in antiperspirants and how it could cause get into your system, cause aluminum toxicity, all of that. I think that's been pretty much debunked. I think it probably can cause skin irritation in some people. And, you certainly will hear people talk about how their antiperspirant is causing irritation, skin irritation. Could be due to the aluminum. So if that's happening to you, stop using it. Would be the answer, unless you absolutely need a strong antiperspirant. If you're just looking at aluminum exposures, I think it's pretty reasonable to say that the level of exposure you're going to get is, 10-fold higher through food and water than it is what's likely to be taken up from your antiperspirant. So in terms of like a major source of aluminum exposure, probably not.
Interesting. So you're at Fred Meyer or something buying deodorant. Do you go Tom's aluminum free, or do you go whatever Dove typical? Like, does it affect your decision at all?
No,
whatever's cheaper.
But I use a deodorant, not an antiperspirant, not because of aluminum.
Okay,
just because I don't sweat that much.
Interesting. I guess I've never really thought of the difference between the two. But like, I switched to Tom's a few years ago. It doesn't work as well. But I'm like, oh, well, at least I don't have the aluminum. But now I'm watching this, talking to you. It's like, does it even matter?
Well, it probably doesn't. But again, we were talking about environmental exposures, right? So from a pragmatic perspective, if it doesn't matter to you, reduce your exposure. It may or may not have any real impact, right? And I will say, like, I've heard other people say this in my own experiences. I think I used Old Spice for years, right? And then suddenly it started irritating my skin. So I switched, again, that's really what's driving my choice is I want something that doesn't irritate my skin.
There you go. All right.
Non-stick pans.
Depends on how they're non-stick. If they're using PFAS, I would avoid them.
Intermittent.
Again, I think that's fine. I think this is another majoring in the minor. Like, I think for most people, your level of exposure is not going to be significant from nonstick pans. I don't think PFAS is even that common anymore. And you're more likely to get higher levels of exposure from, food packaging than from nonstick pans. So if you want to be pragmatic, you want to avoid as much as you can. Sure, I agree completely. I think this is kind of like food dyes, probably not as important as people have been led to believe that it is in terms of your overall exposure. But why not avoid it if possible?
The convenience of nonstick it's a hard one to beat. I'll use a wooden spatula because at least you're not scraping up the whatever might be on the top of it. But
yeah, but again, it's my understanding that the newer sort of versions of nonstick pans have sort of overcome the problems that we know about. Now, maybe there are going to be other problems that we learn about later.
Like ceramic, I see that's a one option.
Fasting.
One of many techniques to reduce caloric intake. You just have to be careful that you're not underdoing your protein, which is the biggest risk people have.
Right, that's the last one.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think the only thing I would add is, again, for some people, I think intermittent fasting is a slippery slope, or maybe not slippery slope's the right word. It can unintentionally reinforce eating disorders. So if you're prone to an eating disorder, I think it can be negative in that context. It is a perceived healthy approach that validates your eating disorder for some people. I'm not saying that's for everyone. I think you just want to be aware. In addition to the body composition, making sure you get enough protein, make sure you're eating a high quality diet. If you are prone to an eating disorder, you just need to be honest to yourself and say, am I using intermittent fasting to validate my eating disorder?
Yeah. Well, we should link to the short I just did of when I tell a story about when I did 1 meal a day, ended up fainting, and lost a lot of weight and everything. But
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, the interview I had with Shannon Anderson yesterday, which may or may not come out before or after this one, she talks about her experience with an eating disorder, and intermittent fasting came up in that context. So, this was good. Again, I think I would say overall, I mean, clearly Peter knew what the questions were going to be before they got asked. I think he did a good job given the context. I think this generally reinforces why I and many other people think Peter's a pretty credible voice in the space. It's hard to answer questions like this that have nuance in 5 words or less.
Well, you might be doing it soon.
Which I guess we're going to try. Yeah.
I can't picture that, but we'll see.
I'll try to give a longer, more nuanced answer than bullshit. I
was just thinking that bullshit. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, this was fun.
Yeah, this was great. As always, thank you for tuning in to the Optispan podcast, season 3. If you're not yet a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. It really means a lot to us. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. We read all the comments and we try to respond to as many as we can. We'll catch you next time on the podcast.